Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Friedlander. I'm the C. Boyd and Gray Senior Fellow and Deputy Director of the Atlantic Council's Geoeconomics Program. And it's my pleasure today to discuss the future of the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development with Australia's candidate for the position, Mathias Cormann. Sir, you've served as Finance Minister to 3 Australian Prime Ministers. It is my pleasure to have you here. I thought maybe we could start out the conversation just by talking about why the organization should have new leadership and the role that it actually plays in global economic governance.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your program. Look, the OECD is all about delivering better policies for better lives. That's a very powerful statement of its purpose and of its ambition. While the issues and the specific policy challenges we face evolve over time, the OECD develops its policies from the very strong foundation of a core set of shared values and principles which have stood the test of time. Our shared commitment to democracy, human rights, the rule of law, open markets, rules-based international order, so important to us as open economies and open trading economies. Indeed, the OECD deploys its proven methodology, facilitating cooperation, providing comparative data and policy analysis, promoting policy best practice, setting standards. And that's how, over the last 60 years, the OECD has made a massive contribution to lifting living standards and the quality of life for people around the world. Right now, as we continue to grapple, as the world continues to grapple with the economic, social, and health effects of the greatest pandemic in more than a century, the OECD's mission of the past of promoting stronger, cleaner, fairer growth continues to be the very important mission for the future. Angel Gurria, who's done an outstanding job as Secretary General over nearly 15 years now, is stepping down by the end of May, and so the organization is now exploring the transition in the leadership, and it's going to be very important. It will be important that we maintain the momentum, particularly at this time, so we can maximize the strength of the economic recovery in the wake of the COVID pandemic to secure sustainable, greener, cleaner, more inclusive growth, so that we effectively promote market-based policies and a rules-based global order. We need to increase and strengthen the OECD's outreach, we believe, into the Asia Pacific. And indeed, the OECD will need to support global leadership on ambitious and effective action on climate change. And also, of course, in relation to the issue of digital taxation, it's going to be important to find a multilaterally coordinated, internationally coordinated way forward that is fair and equitable.
Thank you so much for that. And I think you highlighted on several very crucial points there. And I think one of them is that, the OECD plays a very crucial role in global economic affairs. And maybe our electorates and people watching this and other things don't necessarily understand that. So I thank you for highlighting that. You've been at the forefront of financial leadership for so long. In a bilateral context, or it's sort of in a sovereign context. How would you extend your expertise there to running a large multilateral body? It's a different animal.
Well, look, there's a very strong lineup of candidates for the position of Secretary General of the OECD, and when that's great for the organization, it just demonstrates how valued the organization is across all member countries. And in the end, it's going to be a matter for the Council of OECD members to decide who is chosen to provide leadership moving forward over the next 5 years. From our point of view, what we are, I guess, putting forward is the fact that I have extensive economic and leadership experience in a G20 economy, which I can bring to the table. I have direct experience, domestic policy experience in the context of the response to the COVID pandemic. I do also bring I guess, a unique global perspective. Having been born in Belgium, having grown up in Belgium, I bring my European background as well as my Asia-Pacific experience and networks, having served as finance minister here in Australia over the past 7 years. And finally, I clearly across the OECD, while we are united through a shared commitment to some core values, there is a diversity of views on specific policy issues, and it's always important to find ways to generate consensus. And I believe that in an Australian political context, I have a track record as a bridge builder, which I've had to deploy often in the context of my role as leader of the Australian government in the Senate, where often I had to find ways to bring different political perspectives together. And look, in the end, as I say, it's up to the OECD members to decide. But we're putting our best foot forward. We do believe that I have a set of experiences and skills and background that would be useful, hopefully, to the organization and the membership over the next 5 years.
Sure, and more than hopefully, knowing how the sausage is made is the first step, right? So anyone who's survived politics for that long knows how it works. Maybe you could guide us through how you might navigate some of the stickier issues that the OECD handles. I'm thinking digital taxation, first of all. The US today held its fire in its investigation into a French digital services tax. I think that's a positive development. And as a former Treasury Department employee myself, I'm hoping for a amicable resolution in the OECD. And then also a little bit climate finance, right, which is going to be an issue at the forefront of the agenda, the G20, and among developed economies.
Well, I think on any of these issues, firstly, I think it is important to do everything we can to achieve a multilaterally coordinated and internationally coordinated multilateral approach that is broadly acceptable. When it comes to digital tax, the reality is, governments around the world need to be able to raise taxes to fund the essential services they provide and that are expected, by their populations, and governments need to be able to raise taxes in a way that's efficient, least distorting in their economies, and that is fair and equitable. And on that front, the combined effects of the digitalization and the globalization of our economies has created some distortions and has created some inequities that need to be addressed. And it is absolutely in everybody's interest, in my view, that is done in a multilaterally coordinated fashion, in a multilaterally agreed fashion. If we were to have a proliferation of unilateral measures, which is what's going to happen increasingly if there is no global solution, then that will put more pressure on our international trading system and on our global economy at a time when we want to maximize the strength of the economic recovery post-COVID. And so, I think that there is, it's in the interest of everyone, including the companies involved, incidentally, to have certainty, to have one globally accepted set of rules where everybody understands that the tax arrangements are efficient, but they're also fair and equitable. And if this issue is not resolved by the time that the new Secretary General takes up his or her position, and should I be selected, I would certainly do everything I can to achieve that consensus by explaining that really that is the best way forward ultimately for everyone concerned. In relation to climate finance, look, the OECD ought to deploy all of its levers and all of its capabilities to support global leadership on ambitious and effective action on climate change. Climate finance is an important component, of this, of course. Developed economies do need to support developing economies in mitigating climate change and adapting to climate change. And indeed, developed economies have made substantial financial commitments. And in that context, it's going to be important to ensure that through transparent reporting that those commitments are maintained, and the OECD, of course, already does work on that front. But I think there's probably more that can be done to really give confidence to everyone concerned that developed economies continue to do what they're committed to do in relation to their climate finance commitments. But I think that where the OECD also can perhaps do more is to really showcase those best practice examples of climate finance projects that are working and providing analysis and case studies around projects that work and projects perhaps that don't work, and doing the analysis on why that is so, and facilitating the conversation to ensure that we have the best possible outcomes. Because in the end, there's a substantial financial commitment on the table, and we want to ensure that the money is spent to the best effect, that we get the best bang for our buck.
You make a lot of very astute points there, especially about digital economy in the post-corona, or hopefully post-corona world. Mr. Cormann, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you the best of luck with your candidacy. Paris would be lucky to have you, and 13-hour time difference between I'm in New York, you're in Perth, doesn't mean much. Have a good day.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, and best wishes for a happy, healthy, and successful 2021.